All right, let's dive in. It was about 6 o'clock last evening. The House of Representatives wrapped up the longest floor session in legislative history in Washington. It was about 24 and a half hours of debate, 80 amendments. Majority Democrats then ultimately passed the income tax, and members were a little rummy, tired, punch drunk, whatever you want to use to describe that. And some were uh, catching like 20-minute cat naps in the wings on couches. It was interesting. Some I was watching them actually just like lean back in their chairs and close their eyes and sort of fall asleep and then catch themselves. I mean, who can blame them? Many of these people had been up for 40 plus hours at that point. So, um, Republicans ran all those amendments, I'm told, because they wanted to put some daylight on this income tax bill that they consider to be one of the most consequential pieces of legislation to ever come up in this body. By final passage speeches, some members were growing a bit weary, and there were some funny, maybe, comments made. Some folks on the Republican side didn't appreciate maybe just the lighthearted nature, laughter of some of the members in the majority on those final speeches. But here's a couple of them, and you can see for yourself.
There's a myth floating around today and yesterday that capital will leave Washington, this whole concept of capital flight. The truth is, millionaires would pay more in other states, Madam Speaker. Even our youth today appreciate when we talk about the difference between 6, 7 figures. If somebody's making over 7 figures, they still pay less. For example, if you're making 1.2 million here in Washington, you get that first milli free, and you're only paying taxes on the 200 grand, about 20,000. Over in Idaho, you're going to be paying about 68K. Oregon has the 9.9% on that first dollar, like we've talked about. They're just not giving that free milli like we're doing here in this bill. Massachusetts and Minnesota already passed a tax on high earners. And all the terrible predictions that we're hearing about people leaving those states, it didn't happen. This is why you've heard us voting down amendment after amendment after amendment. In Massachusetts, the number of millionaires increased by over 30% in the years after passage, leaving a million here, a million there.
What a year, right? Since I first came to this body full of vim and vinegar and confidence. The House, a lot like me, is not afraid to pick a fight. It's not afraid to throw down, as you have seen for the last 24 hours of uninterrupted Thunderdome. All of my colleagues are feral for justice in their own ways for their own districts, and I appreciate each and every one of them. And the space that we're standing in right now, millionaires, not you and I, Madam Speaker, but millionaires pay 4% of their income in taxes. Working folks like me and you pay about 11%. And the only thing I like less than a fight that I probably picked is something that is that egregiously and obviously unfair. The millionaires that are subject to this tax just got a big old tax break from the FedGov with H.R. 1. So maybe they won't mind contributing here at home. Maybe they want to contribute sustainably to our shared prosperity and our shared future. I am so excited that one of our priorities this year was to make Washington affordable again.
At one point on the floor last night, just ahead of final passage, Majority Leader Joe Fitzgibbon of West Seattle, he stood up and said, it's not up to us to determine whether or not this income tax is constitutional. That will be up to the court, he said. Likely to be almost immediate legal challenges upon the governor's signature. Maybe a citizen initiative effort will be launched. We'll see what happens there. But House Republican leader Drew Stokesbury of Auburn, an attorney himself, he immediately rose um, in rebuke of what Rep. Fitzgibbon had said. I think he was standing up before Fitzgibbon even sat down in his seat to object to the assertion that lawmakers can offer up bills that have constitutional questions. And during today's Republican media availability, I got a chance to ask him about his response on the floor last night.
All three branches of government, when they take office, they swear an oath to uphold the Constitution, including us. If it wasn't our job to abide by the Constitution, and that was only the court's job, then why on earth would we have to take that oath in the first place? It makes no sense. We take the oath because it means something. It means we've got to do our best to do what we think is constitutional and avoid doing what we believe to not be constitutional. So it's one thing to have a difference of opinion, and some people think something is constitutional and some people don't. That's a sign of a healthy democracy. But to pass something you know to be unconstitutional based on the extremely clear direction given by the state Supreme Court, it is not a close call. If the Supreme Court upholds their 1933 decision, this tax will be dismissed 9-0. You rarely get legal constitutional questions that are more clear than this. The only way this survives constitutional scrutiny is if the Supreme Court gets rid of their 100-year-old precedent. So it's our job to follow that 100-year-old precedent. That's what's on the books. It's very clear. It is our job as a legislature to only do that which is constitutional. Under current Supreme Court precedent, this bill is plainly unconstitutional.
You may have seen, if you follow social media today, and I think it's been picked up by a bunch of national news outlets, that former Starbucks CEO Howard Schultz on Tuesday evening posted that he's out for good. He and his wife have moved to Florida. He says it's family reasons. They're, nearing retirement. But they've been in the Seattle area nearly half a century. He didn't specifically say this is because of the income tax, although he did reference hoping that, the business climate would remain friendly in Washington state. Could be a connection here to the passage of the income tax last night. That's, up to you to decide. But this also comes a week after Starbucks said they would be opening a new corporate office, not in Washington state anywhere, but in Nashville, Tennessee. So make of that what you will. Um, Also on Wednesday, the National Federation of Independent Business issued a statement in response to passage of the tax. We'll put part of that up. It was Patrick Connor, who's the state director for the National Federation of the NFIB, on the passage of the income tax. And he said, majority party repeatedly mentioned they were going to do this to help small business, a nod to the expanded B&O exemption for very small firms. Quote, had they listened to our state's small business owners and representative organizations, they would have heard loud and clear that small business does not want this income tax. And then they went on to mention, or Patrick Connor's statement went on to mention that one of the few amendments that was adopted on the floor Tuesday was one to give a tax break for hospitals and large physician groups, including UW physicians. But he said, that reinforces what he called how tone deaf the majority is to the small medical practices and small business owners who are not getting a tax exemption in the income tax version that passed off the House floor. So the final vote was 51-46. 8 Democrats crossed over and voted against the bill with all Republicans. The talk in the wings last night was that some of those Democrats who are typically always very pro-tax, very left-leaning members, may have crossed over because, first of all, their yes votes weren't needed. We've got such a lopsided majority of Democrats in the House that they didn't need everybody's vote. Some were suggesting they need the no vote to look good to their constituents come reelection time. We'll see what happens there. The bill right now is back on the Senate side. Not sure if it's going to come up to the floor for final concurrence and debate on that today or tomorrow, last day of session. When I asked in the Senate wings earlier today, a couple of members said, we don't know. It's completely up to the majority, and the majority wasn't indicating whether or not the bill would come to the floor today. But we'll be watching and bring you an update on that for sure.